you had so far? You had a few of them so far, right?
So, yeah, we had Morris Misra and Charles Mizrahi did the first one. Julie, how like a month and a half ago, probably.
Yeah, it was probably like a month ago.
Then we had one with Joey Jerome, and then Monday night we had our first woman stoop talk with Sophia Cohen, Urban Pops.
Nice, great.
So, yeah.
Wow. Great concept. Love the concept. Super.
Didn't I change it?
All right, so I made Ralph and Julie co-host, and I set it
Yep.
to record, and now I'm just
Perfect.
gonna go mute and enjoy the program.
Great.
Meet
Thanks,
me out
Sarah.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I changed it.
Okay.
So we're gonna give it a few minutes. Just let some more people come in.
Okay, great. Hi, Marsh, how are you?
Hi.
Have family support here. Good to see you. Okay. Hi, Lisa, how are you?
We're good now.
Good.
Just gonna give it till 6:05.
Okay. He wants to boost it. Yeah. Charlie's on. I think Florence is on. And Robin is on.
Hi, Rob. I'm not muted? No,
I'm sorry?
not muted. Oh, she
Oh,
will
okay.
die. So
Hi, Jane. Hi, Rick.
Hi, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good
Wait,
thing.
mine, yours is coming now, right?
Yeah,
You'll
yeah.
do yours too, probably.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, honey.
What's going?
Happy birthday, Robin.
Happy birthday,
Thank you,
Robin
Marcia.
Chalmers. All right.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, how are you?
What's
Nice to
up?
see you. Good. Good.
Oh, shoot.
Chairman is with us. Ricky, nice to have you. Ricky Novick. Beautiful
Say hi.
program tonight. It was super.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Really special. Really special. Hi, Nathan. How are you?
Hi, Mr. Cohen. How you doing?
Good to see you.
I really only came on just to say that I remember when I was in high school, you came to Hillel. You came to Hillel, and I remember from that many years ago.
Thank you.
I don't know if, yeah, it was great.
I sure do remember. That was really
So
nice.
it's a great, great to see you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
How you doing, Dad?
Hi, honey. How are you? All right.
Hi, Mr. Cohen. How are you?
Good. What's that?
Hey, Mark.
It's Jack Shaver. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Jack. Wow, where are you?
He's right here.
You
Oh,
see?
hi. All right. Great.
I told
Thanks.
this is gonna be the best one they have yet.
Inshallah. Thank you, Jack. Great.
I'm listening.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Hi,
I think I'm
Bobby. How are
gonna,
you? How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you for joining.
I think I'm gonna mute everybody so that you guys can get ready to start, okay?
All right, you good, Rob? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll give it 30 seconds.
Okay, great.
Okay. Sorry, you muted everyone? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. All right, let's begin. So first, I just want to welcome everybody to another episode of Stoop Talk. It's been a pleasure being able to host these and just conduct them. So thank you everyone for joining. Before we begin tonight, I just want to say thank you to Sabrina Mala, Julie Shahebar, Sari Seton, Joey Towell, the entire center team for giving us the opportunity to be able to conduct these events, as well as the Misri family. The young adult department at the center was generously sponsored by the Misri family in memory of their son, Albert Alav Shalom. So Ricky Cohen is a man that needs no introduction. A close friend of mine, mentor, role model. I think he's inspired hundreds, if not thousands of people in our community. As a motivational speaker, a successful entrepreneur, an author, a philanthropist, a community leader. I mean, the list goes on and on. Ricky has developed a very unique ability and perspective on being able to grow in times like these and to find opportunities. So it's with great humility and honor that I introduce everyone to Ricky Cohen. Ricky's going to be doing a lecture style format today, which is a little different from what we've done in the past. So he's going to talk for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll take questions in the chat thereafter, and I'll be able to ask them to Ricky for everybody to hear. So Ricky, with that.
Great. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you at the center, dear friends, for the invitation. It's very much appreciated. And I think the platform is great and very important. I want to focus on three things. We're going to title tonight, Post-Corona, the New World Order, Changes and Opportunities. And we're going to focus in three areas. First, mindset and action. The second, that New World Order. And the third, how to take 1 and 2 and how to make things happen. To get us all focused and sort of kick things off, I want to tell you two short stories. One was many years ago. It was at the time when I had been involved in my business for 4 or 5 years. Business was roaring, super strong. And there was an issue that impacted at the time both our community and the Ashkenaz community. And a number of us were called into a room to suggest ideas on how to solve this challenge. Everybody spoke and offered suggestions for the better part of an hour. In the middle of the conversation, one man walked in the door very quietly, modestly dressed, much more modestly than just about anybody else in the room, head down, and went and sat in the last row, last seat, literally. After about an hour, we hadn't gotten very far. This man raised his hand in a very humble way and spoke one sentence that said more than just about everything that had been said until that point, that hit target right on, hit the issue right on, and effectively closed the meeting successfully. When he walked out of the room, we looked at each other, young guys running, flying in our business, and we said, who was that? It was Paul Reichman from Olympia, York. This was the 80s. And at the time, Mr. Reichman and his family were worth somewhere in the $6 billion range. You never would have known it. Not how he was dressed and not how he carried himself. And I want to tell one other quick story about my father, alav shalom. My dad grew up in Tampa, Florida. Most people were farmers, and of course, we're Syrian, we're Jewish. We had a store. My dad and my grandfather had a store selling the farmers what they needed. It's a small store, and it gave them a living. My grandfather, La'alenu, passed away young, and my father and his siblings, my grandmother, came to New York City. And my parents, as many of our parents, started a small business on Fordham Road in the Bronx. And I worked with my father. I had the beracha to work with him for a number of years. And one of the things that always shocked me, that always caught me in my tracks, was when he used to go back to his southern drawl. He used to say things slowly, with a little bit of a southern twang, and I didn't get it until I saw it over and again. And then I understood that it defined a mindset and a way of looking at the world. So let's start in our post-corona understanding, and let's think about Mr. Reichman and my father. I believe that the post-corona business person, chesed leader, family leader, needs to change his ofi, change the way he carries himself in the following ways. Any sense of deservedness, out. Hubris, out. Arrogance, out. Anybody who walks around post-corona with a sense of expectation or deservedness was simply living somewhere far away from everybody on the planet. The post-corona leader, I believe, is a Paul Reichman, or how my father, alav shalom, carried himself. There's a sense of strength, dignity, self-confidence, pride, self-love. We're not talking about meekness. We're talking about humility with power, humility with strength. I believe that post-corona says that we carry ourselves differently. And that doesn't mean that we're meek. Humility doesn't suggest weakness. Humility suggests quiet confidence and self-assertiveness that doesn't come from encroaching on something, but that comes from working in a very respectful way. I believe that genuity is more in than ever before. That integrity will be a greater value than ever before. And that sincerity will be more looked for and listened for than ever before. What Corona did, essentially, is it stripped away all the external. There was no more external. The only external expression we had was the bare necessities to eat and drink and so on. Otherwise, it was gone. So in post-corona, that person who can internalize the lack of external and walk into that conference room or that business meeting, no less confident, but less expecting and less deserving, I believe will be the strongest, most noticed person in the room. Quiet confidence, quiet strength. It goes to what Eric Fromm wrote so beautifully in one of his books. He writes that the successful person is the person who wants something but doesn't need it. And the difference between wanting and needing changes the way a person speaks, changes his body language when he walks into a room. If I want this deal to happen, if I want this new chesed project to move, but I don't need it to move for me, to validate me, because I understand that my validation was only on the core things, the eternal things in life that I reclaimed when I was stuck at home. If I can remember when things crank back up, that it's all about wanting, which means if it happens, it's great. And if it doesn't happen, it's great. And not needing, well, then I'm a different person. If I can remember, we have a klal in Judaism that en beracha ela b'davar samoy min ha'ayin. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard it before. And it means that where is the beracha? Where is the blessing? It's in the things that are not in somebody's face, are quiet, are low key. That's post-corona. I believe people will get back blowing their horns. I believe that'll happen. But I believe that the new world order will be about the man and the lady who walk into their room, whether it's a business setting, a chesed setting, an institutional environment, a family environment, saying less, demanding less, speaking more slowly, speaking more softly, considering their words more carefully, and having a perspective of, you know what, this would be great. But you know what? We all learned that whatever we worked for so hard and sweat for so hard and worried about so much was shut off in a second. So you know what? Is it important? It certainly is. Is it different important? If it can be different important, then I'm a new person. And I believe a more successful one in the post-corona world. Point 2, the New World Order. In order to suggest what I believe the New World Order will be, I'm going to read a few sentences from a book that I wrote 7 years ago that McGraw-Hill published called Risk to Succeed. It spoke about the world order emerging then, and in truth, it's become more real now than it was then. It goes as follows. We live at a fascinating time. Intellectual borders are disappearing. Geographic boundaries are blurred. The lines between politics, the business world, and the world of nonprofits are fading as key personalities in each discipline take leadership positions in the others. The local marketplace is global. That's more true now than it was then. And stakeholders compete and benefit from talent, brain power, and initiative nurtured at the farthest points on the planet. The power of the mind has replaced physical strength and is quickly replacing natural resources as the world's currency, the most resilient tool to ensure influence and success. Smart risk takers have amassed more wealth and influence than companies decades in existence. So how does that relate to today? In fact, as I mentioned, I think it's more true than ever. Borders, what are borders? There were essentially no borders in this situation. We learned more than ever before how in our time, which is the greatest time in human history, how small the world is and how accessible the world is. So in the post-corona business world, chesed effort, educational effort, the local marketplace is global. If I operate here in New York City, if my business focus is in Philadelphia, wherever it might be, it should be focused there, but not limited to that. As I build my local business effort, I should have in mind the scalability now is like never before. Here, we're all speaking. I don't know how far away any of you are. We saw some beautiful insights from a gentleman in India, and we're getting things from Israel all the time in a split second. Boundaries, borders, limitations, locality, not anymore. This has been developing over the past several years, but it's been turbocharged by this experience. The economic ceilings that people may have felt were on them, they never really were, but in effect, they're nowhere within sight now. Most of those people who have built great financial success or not-for-profit organizations that are making serious things happen in the world started with nothing. They started with an idea. And if it was tough to get people's attention 50 years ago, if it was hard to get people's support financially 30 years ago, that's dramatically changed. Is it hard? Yeah. I still have to know my stuff and do my homework and present super well. But we live at the greatest time in world history, the greatest time in human history, and by the way, the greatest time in Jewish history. There's much more money than there are good ideas. And for the first time in human history, and I've said it before, there are human beings who have more wealth than countries, which means the power of an idea was never greater. Was this true 7 years ago when Wish to Succeed came out? Absolutely was. Was it turbocharged in its truth and its effectiveness now with Corona? Beyond my wildest imagination. So let's put the first two pieces together. A, the surface stuff, the hubris, the showy stuff, the noise, it was never good. It's much less good now. Genuity, integrity, dignity, soft-spokenness was always good. It's even more important now. Say less, speak more carefully, and think more carefully about everything that's said. B, the New World Order. The world order after the crash of the market in 2008, 2009 was completely different than the previous time. But to whatever extent there were boundaries and geographic limitations or intellectual limitations, they were swept away. And in our time, now, as a result of this experience, as we dust off our scraped knees, so to speak, and dry our tears and pick ourselves back up and go back out into the workplace and into the chesed venue and into the educational venue to build again, we need to remind ourselves that it is the greatest time in human history. And the accessibility of brain power, of talent, of quality people, the ability to project an idea has never been easier. The ability to scale an idea has never been easier. Is it hard? It better be, otherwise it wouldn't have a lot of value. But is it easier than ever? Certainly easier than ever. By the way, just parenthetically, you know that we have no word in Hebrew for retire, right? No word in Hebrew for retire. Why? Because when humanity becomes better, age becomes revered again. And if one of the things that I feel very strongly came out of this is that those who hung on, who will continue to live long lives, because our medical infrastructure will be dramatically upgraded as a result of this. And with God's help, life expectancy will get even longer, which means that you don't stop developing, you don't stop growing, You don't stop launching new businesses. You don't run out of gas. You don't retire. There's no word in Judaism for retire. We get older. We get better. You have an idea, you put it out there. Part 3. When we have something like this happen, and now we understand how we should carry ourselves, and briefly we discussed the world circumstances that should enable greater opportunity in every venue than ever before. Now, the final point is, how do I tool myself to be the person that has the clarity of presence, the clarity of thought, the ability to put that concept together and to move it forward? And I want to present the following. A, and again, these were Corona reinforced concepts. The human being is made up of 4 key dimensions: the spiritual side, the emotional side, the intellectual side, and the personal career side. You can't truncate any of them. If I want to be the post-Corona person who steps out with quiet strength and unshakable confidence into this new world order, it's imperative that I satisfy and build and help thrive my spiritual needs, my emotional needs, my intellectual needs, and that practical expression. So if my spiritual needs are religious, if they're learning, whatever they might be, they got to be a real part of my day, every day. If my emotional needs need fixing, bring the right people into your life. Learn, read, grow, so that you're emotionally more fulfilled than you ever were before. And keep growing emotionally. Intellectually, we know there's no neutral when it comes to knowledge. Intellectually, we've got to grow every single day. And then practically, the career expression, we've got to begin to reach. So how does it work? Let's assume that we come out of this thing more soft-spoken, more confident, because we've been reminded of those things that are eternal. We understand how to carry ourselves better. And now we service ourselves emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, so we feel good, so we feel complete, so we feel integrated, so we're true to us. Now, with that platform, now I begin to be expansive. Now I look at things and I say, how can I take what was before and drag it forward with a new face? What is that face going to be? People have to buy clothing, but it's got to be quicker. It's got to be more responsive. It's got to be more human. How do I shorten that process? How do I connect more directly with people? How do I make it cheaper and quicker? Those of us who will be committed to dragging the old forward into the post-Corona world may find things a little choppy. But if I'm in the garment business, if I'm in the book business, if I'm in the technology business, and I have good core product, and I can understand how to flatten the pyramid more, how to shrink the committee, how to quicken the response time, how to feel closer to my customer, how to have my customer reach me more quickly and easily, and for me to be there with a smile. If I can quicken and cheapen the process, I'm onto something great. So, post-Corona, there are going to be certain industries that are going to explode. It's obvious. Things like telemedicine, things like that, spectacular if you're in that business. Fascinating. Many of us are not in that business. Many of us are in more straightforward things that we've been doing that can always be made fresh again. So A, is what I'm doing redundant? Hopefully it isn't. B, If there are plenty of other people doing it, that's fine. How do I make it quicker, faster, happier, more responsive, more nimble? That's what people want now. They want it quicker. They want to feel closer. And that's what I believe is the opportunity. So if a person carries himself the right way, looks around him, and understands that he may be operating locally, but he should be planning to go more global and reach out for talent and expertise that's anywhere and everywhere, and think about and build a plan to sell his product way beyond the constricts of our local market. And then he's true to him so that he can begin to imagine and be expansive and be ambitious and think broadly and have in mind that it's slimmer and trimmer and quicker. Then I think we will have a level of business success like we haven't seen before. We'll have a level of success in our chesed efforts that's unparalleled to date. And I believe the same can be true in our educational efforts, with God's help. All right, Ralph, you're on.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really always admire the way you articulate your thoughts in such an inspirational manner.
Thank you.
I think I say that on behalf of everyone, so thank you. So for those of you who joined late, as I mentioned before, we're gonna take questions in the chat for Ricky, if anybody has. Ricky, I'm gonna start with a question on my own until some thoughts come filtering in. What are some practical exercises and things we could do right now? You know, people have some downtime. You know, kids have downtime, adults have downtime, young people like me have some downtime. So how could we take advantage of this time to grow professionally, grow as an individual? You know, what exercises? I know that you're very big on that.
So I really believe that in days like this, when one day follows the other and almost becomes a blur, if we put markers in time, then the days become very important and meaningful. So for example, if I'm committed to learning Torah, for example, so I should be doing that every day, even if it's a handful of minutes a day, so that I can look back on the previous week or the previous X number of days and say, you know what? I learned this idea on Monday, I learned this on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and so on. So I think there should be an allocated portion of time every day for intellectual growth. Let's assume that part of that is dedicated to Torah growth. The second part of that should be dedicated to learning more about the business or the businesses that I enjoy and that I'm in. Let's say that each person took 15 or 20 minutes a day during these days and just read up on a broader selection of articles and periodicals and studies on what they do. They don't have the rigor and the demands of being in the office now, getting pulled in one direction after another. So they have the time to read and to learn and to grow and to pick up a new idea. And the other thing that I love is when people dedicate time to read and learn about something that has absolutely nothing to do with what they do for a living. Because I think that's inspiring and it's stimulating. And I always felt that if a person is in business A, he should continue each day reading whatever he needs to read about business A. But because he's a human being and he needs to be expansive and needs to be a maker of change, and he needs to be someone who anticipates opportunity, he should also be reading about things that have nothing to do with what he does for a living. Things that other people do successfully, from which he can get some great ideas. So to the extent that we're growing intellectually each day during these days, each day then becomes a day of real value. Cool?
Great answer. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions for Ricky? No. So Rick, on that last note, about just learning and reading, any book recommendations for the crowd?
I think things that have to do, serious things that have to do with people who have done important things in their lives. You know, I'm a fan of that. I'm real people who've done real things, serious things. Thankfully, there are plenty of them around, and it's easier than ever for them to share their insights. These books are accessible, and what will happen is you pick up one or two ideas from a person of substance, a person of seriousness, and those become part of you. And more often than not, those were things that you cared about all along, but may have given less focus on in recent times. So I like things of substance. I like people of substance. I like to understand the tools they used to see and to build and to understand. I like to see what they did when times were painful and when their hopes and dreams didn't go in the direction they hoped. How did they deal with that? And those are the things that I think have great value.
Right. So we have a question from Sabrina. Ricky, what would you say to people who are experiencing a great amount of stress at this time? Just overall anxiety and nervousness about the uncertainty and, you know, what the world looks like going forward. It seems like we're getting mixed messages from local politicians, from, you know, the president himself. So
I think we've all been feeling that. Everybody has, because it's true. There is a huge amount of uncertainty. And what do we do? What do we do at a time when the leadership doesn't know what to do, right? And that's what Sabrina is alluding to. We've gotten nothing but mixed messages, and that's because people are flying blind. This is an unparalleled modern day experience. So what do we do in these times? We reassert me. We make me, each of us, each me, more clear about who we are. What do I care about? I care about A, B, C, D. That's who Ricky Cohen is. That's who Sabrina Mala is. That's who Ralph is. I know who I am and what has real value to me. And I've re-engaged those things each day of this non-engagement period. And because of that, despite all the confusion out there, I know better who I am. And that's the only way to beat this, is to be more sure of self, more confident of self, more clear on who we are, so that our children can look to us, our contemporaries can look to us. I think that's what is wanted of us at this point, and I think it's very achievable. And then, when I'm as clear about me, or more clear than I've ever been, if I'm as sure about my values as I've ever been, even though I'm being bombarded by the lack of clarity around me, and it still makes things hard, but because I know who I am and what I want, as well as I've ever known that, that's my greater strength. That's what I use to butt these times and to grow through them.
precious advice. Okay. We have a question from Morris Kish. Moving away from personal and moving more towards the business economic side of the situation, what do you see from the economic future of our community? Will it be as affluent in the long run, and does it even matter?
You know, I think that the short term is going to be very hard. I think it's going to be hard. I think for the community, it's going to be hard. In my experience, I think it's going to parallel what we were living through when our extended family members came from Syria, and there was a huge financial stress on the community, and almost a stress that almost broke the community in certain ways. I think there's going to be something like that now. So I think we're going to all have to be more charitable. We're going to have to be more giving. If we gave 10% to charity, we need to give more. If we gave 15%, we need to give more. Are we afraid to give more because our businesses are less stable? Absolutely, but we have to do it anyway. So I think the short term is going to be challenging. I think people are going to have to sacrifice rather than give. And that's a big difference. And I think if people can look at the greater story and appreciate that when we sacrifice, even more so than when we give, God notices it and good things ultimately happen. And I believe that with all my heart. I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've done it, and I've seen others do it. So to Morris's question, I think the short term at least is going to be serious and hard. I think we're going to all have to be much more giving, much more patient, much more accessible, and much more charitable.
Great answer. And, I think it's something that we've been hearing from a lot of leaders is that it's an opportunity to realign and reset our priorities as a community.
Yeah.
Okay, Ricky, last question from Jack. You talk about a lot about, personal changes that we should make and focus on during this time. Jack wants to know, are people going to stick to the post-corona changes, or will life go back to normal after a few months because of human nature?
You know, something I really hope and pray. It's a fabulous question, and I hope and pray that somehow, as things come back, and they come back strong, and they'll come back stronger than ever. They do. But this is not a coincidence. The world is not a chaotic place. There's an order. There's an almighty being. There's a direction. And I think it's important that each of us make enough changes in our lives now and note those changes and put them onto our phone calendars and stick to them so that when the world comes back, all of these good things don't become transient things that were important for a time and they're now forgotten. I believe there's more chesed being learned than maybe ever in the community. There's more Torah being learned. There's more chesed being done now with all the restrictions. These things need to become permanent. I think they become permanent when we make them a real part of our calendar. What I did, if I can't do it 4 hours a day going forward because I'm back out and about, I got to do it 20 minutes a day. And you know something I've learned over time? Life gives us the time to do important things. It invariably does. And my most successful periods in my life, when I was running a big company, I was teaching more hours a week than ever. And guess what? It all worked well. So coming out of this, and we need to be tooling ourselves now and memorializing and changing the schedules. And it's fabulous and it's great. And it only makes us better and happier. So that when we come out of this, we're different people. We're permanently made better, and we will continue the good practices that we started now.
Ricky, I remember one thing you told us on that note. You told us in Baruch 6 years ago. You came to give a lecture in Dr. Tal's class, and you said, dedicate 1 hour in your week towards achieving whatever goal you have it is. I think it's, exactly what you just said. So
expansive stuff. Stay on it.
Okay, so
write them down, lock them in, make them permanently part of who you are. and everybody benefits. And you will have grown immeasurably from this experience, and it will be the next chapter of life will be that much more beautiful as a result.
So, Ricky, it's always an absolute pleasure.
Thank
Wanna
you
thank
again.
for the,
I'm really
wanna
thrilled
thank
for the
you.
invitation. Thank you.
Thank you for the time, for the opportunity, and just for the overall inspiration and what you do for our community. So,
Thank you. Julie, Sabrina,
everyone for
Joe,
joining.
thank you all. Very much appreciated. Sari, thank you. Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Now,
Rick, it was great. Thank you.
thank you.